I wasn't supposed to be home until Thursday. My rotation on the rig runs 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I'd been out in the Gulf for 19 days, when the platform supervisor pulled us early. A Category 1 was tracking toward our sector, nothing life-threatening, but enough to shut down non-essential operations and send the non-critical crew back to shore. I was on a helicopter to New Orleans by 6 a.m., a connecting flight to Houston by noon, and standing outside my own front door at 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon, with my duffel bag over my shoulder, and not a single bad thought in my head. I'd texted my wife, Delia, from the airport, no response. She worked from home on Tuesdays. Graphic design, her own clients, her own hours. I figured she had her headphones in and was deep in a project. I didn't think anything of it. I unlocked the front door with my key, dropped my duffel in the entryway, and started toward the kitchen to grab some water. That's when I heard it. This, coming from upstairs, from our bedroom. I stopped walking. Stood in my own hallway, with my hand still on the strap of my bag, and just listened. Sounds I recognized. Sounds that made my stomach drop, before my brain had fully processed what they meant. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, long enough to confirm I wasn't wrong. Long enough to feel something cold and dense settle into the center of my chest. Not panic, not rage. Something quieter. Something that had weight to it. I set my bag down on the floor. Slowly, I walked to the bottom of the stairs and stood there another few seconds. Then I went up, one step at a time, not rushing. My heart wasn't even racing. That surprised me later, how steady everything felt. Like some part of me had already decided how this was going to go. Before I'd consciously decided anything. The bedroom door was halfway open. I pushed it the rest of the way. Delia saw me first. She made a sound, short, sharp, and scrambled to pull the sheet over herself. My younger brother Wyatt twisted around and looked at me over his shoulder. I stood in the doorway. Looked at both of them. Neither of them said anything for a full second. Then Delia said, "You're not supposed to. You have 15 minutes to pack a bag and get out of my house," I said. "Both of you." That was all I said. My voice was completely calm. Not performed calm, just calm. I walked to the closet, pulled down the overnight bag. Delia kept on the top shelf, and dropped it on the foot of the bed. Then I walked out of the bedroom, went downstairs, and sat on the couch. From the couch I could hear them moving around upstairs. Delia crying. Wyatt talking low, trying to calm her down or figure out a plan, probably both. My name came through the ceiling a few times, muffled. I didn't move. I picked up my phone and opened the smart lock app. Changed the front door code, then the garage code. Then I went to the security settings and revoked Wyatt's access. I'd given it to him years ago, for emergencies. He also had a physical key. I made a note of that. 11 minutes later, they came downstairs. Wyatt came first, still tucking in his shirt. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "Man, I need you to." I didn't look up from my phone. "Please," he said. 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. I kept looking at my phone. Delia came down behind him. The bag was barely packed, clothes stuffed in sideways, her toiletry kit from the bathroom hanging open. She was crying and she hadn't wiped her face, and her mascaras had streaked all the way down her cheeks. "My house key," I said. Nobody moved. "Delia, my house key." She dug into her pocket and held it out. I stood, took it, and went back to the couch. "Please," she said, "can you let me explain? I need you to understand." "There's nothing to explain. I love you. I know how insane that sounds right now, but I do. I don't know what this was. It was a mistake. I am so sorry." I looked at the wall behind her. Wyatt put his hand on my shoulder. "Brother." I stood up, walked to the front door and held it open. Stood there and waited. Wyatt looked at me for a long time. His jaw kept moving like he was working. Up to something that would land differently than everything else. He didn't find it. He walked out. Delia stopped in front of me on her way through the door. Up close she looked absolutely wrecked. I believe she was. I also didn't care. "The ring," I said. She looked down at her left hand, like she'd forgotten it was there. She pulled it off and placed it in my palm. Then, she walked out onto the front porch, and down the steps. I closed the door, and locked it. I stood in my own entryway for a while. Then I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water and drank it standing, over the sink. I didn't cry. I didn't put my fist through anything. I stood in the quiet of my house, and drank a glass of water. By 6 p.m., Wyatt had called 22 times. I watched his name appear on the screen and disappear into voicemail, over and over. I answered none of them. At 7 p.m., I poured 2 fingers of bourbon, took it out to the back patio, and made a list on my phone. Divorce attorney, call in the morning. The house had been in my name before we married. I needed to confirm the Texas community property situation with a lawyer. Joint bank accounts, separate before she had time to move anything. Cancel the shared credit card tonight. Change the beneficiary on my 401k and life insurance. Call HR in the morning to flag a potential FMLA situation. I went through it item by item, and when I was done I went back inside and made up the guest room and went to bed. Wyatt had called 41 times by then. I slept 7 hours straight. My mother called at 8:15 the next morning. I answered. I'm still not sure why. Some part of me thought there was a version of this where she called horrified. Where she said she was on my side. Wyatt called me last night, she said. He's not doing well, he hasn't slept. I set my coffee down. Okay. I know you're hurting. I know. But he's still your brother. He's my brother who slept with my wife in my bed, while I was 3 weeks into an offshore rotation. She was quiet for a moment, then, I know. And that was wrong. Nobody is saying it wasn't. But he made a terrible mistake and he's completely destroyed about it. Good. He needs to hear from you. He's not going to. Please. Mom, I love you. This conversation is over. I hung up. My father called 20 minutes later. He took the long view, brought up my grandfather, some 40-year estrangement with a brother, that he'd always said was wasted years. How the old man had died with regrets. I let him finish. Then I said I hope Wyatt thinks about that, someday, and ended the call. The family group chat, me, my parents, Wyatt and my older sister Ingrid, started going around 9 a.m. I scrolled through it without responding. Mom, has anyone reached him? Ingrid, Dad just tried, he hung up on him. Dad, he's not ready, we give him space. Wyatt, please just tell him I'm sorry, tell him I need to hear something, anything. One word, Mom, he'll come around, he needs time. Wyatt, I don't think he will. I muted the chat and turned my phone face down. I called the divorce attorney at 9:30. Got an appointment for that Friday. Separated the joint checking account before lunch. Let an incident report, just in case things escalated. My rig supervisor texted to check in. Not about the situation, just making sure I'd made it home okay. I told him something personal had come up. He said to take all the time I needed and left it at that. That was the only outside support I needed. The days had a pattern after that. Wyatt messaged every morning and every night. I read every message and replied to none of them. The group chat stayed active. My mother coordinating, Ingrid trying to be the reasonable voice, my father sending short messages that felt like he was drafting them carefully. Wyatt mostly wrote to me directly rather than the group. Longer and longer messages as the days went on. I know you're reading these. I can see the read receipts. Please just say something. Say you hate me. Say anything. I let them stack up. Ingrid called me directly about 10 days after it happened. She started the call by saying she wasn't defending him, and she meant it. I could tell by the way she said it that she was working hard to hold that line. She asked how I was doing. I told her I was handling it. She said our parents were pushing for Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone together, and that they wanted me there. Will Wyatt be there? I asked. She took just long enough to answer. That I didn't need to hear the answer. Then I won't. She asked me to think about it. I told her I would, mostly to get off the phone. I had no intention of going. Then my mother called the following Tuesday. She was crying before she finished saying hello. She didn't demand anything, didn't threaten, didn't list reasons. She just said she missed me. She said she was scared she was losing her family, and she didn't know how to stop it. She asked me once. Just once, not the way she'd been asking where there was pressure behind it, just a plain ask. To come to Thanksgiving. I said yes. Which turned out to be exactly what she needed to hear, and exactly what I needed to do. I pulled up to my parents' house at 4:55 p.m. on Thanksgiving. The driveway was full. My mother opened the door before I reached the porch, and hugged me the way she used to when I came home from college. Both arms full weight. Longer than a regular hug. She held on. My father met me in the hallway with a handshake. Firm, eyes meeting mine. Glad you're here, son, he meant it. Ingrid came out of the kitchen and hugged me quick and said, thank you, low enough that only I could hear it. Wyatt was in the armchair by the front window. He got to his feet when he saw me. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He'd dropped weight. His eyes were red at the edges and underlined with shadow. He was wearing the flannel shirt I'd given him for his birthday 2 years ago. I noticed that. I tried not to. Hey, he said. His voice cracked on just the one syllable. I walked past him to the kitchen. And got a beer from the refrigerator. He followed me. Of course he did. 5 minutes, he said. That's all. 5 minutes. I opened the bottle on the edge of the counter, and walked back to the living room, and sat on the couch. He stood in the kitchen doorway watching me. My mother called everyone to the table at 5:30. The spread was what it always was. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casseroles, sweet potato pie, rolls, her cornbread dressing with the jalapenos the way she'd been making it since I was 9 years old. I noticed it. I didn't let myself feel it. I sat at one end of the table. Wyatt sat directly across from me. My mother's doing, put them facing each other, let proximity work on us. I understood it and it didn't change anything. My father said grace. He thanked God for healing, for family gathered, for new beginnings. I kept my eyes open and watched the tablecloth. For the first 15 minutes the conversation was what it had to be, strained and careful. And full of topics nobody cared about. My mother asked about the new Ruta schedule. Ingrid mentioned a client she was working with. My father talked about a project in the garage. Normal Thanksgiving conversation, performed under abnormal conditions. Then Wyatt put his fork down. I have to say this. His voice wasn't steady. I know it might make things worse. But I've been waiting 3 weeks to be in the same room with you. And I can't sit here and pretend I'm just here to eat turkey. The table went quiet. I am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know sorry is the smallest word I could possibly say right now. But I need you to know that I understand what I did. I understand what it cost you. And I need you to know I'm destroyed by it. My father was watching me. My mother had gone still. I reached for the dish of mashed potatoes and spooned some onto my plate. Wyatt's face shifted, not angry, something hollower than that. Did you hear me? He said quietly. Can you pass the gravy? I said to Ingrid. Ingrid passed the gravy. Her hand was shaking slightly. He is talking to you, my father said. His voice had gone hard. I looked at my father calmly. I know. Then respond to him. I set the gravy down, I put my fork on the edge of my plate, and I looked at Wyatt directly, not past him, not through him. At him. I'm going to say this once, I said, and this is the last thing I will ever say to you. The table was completely silent. You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to set your alarm. A mistake is taking the wrong exit on the interstate. What you did required a series of deliberate choices. You drove to my house. You walked through my front door. You went up the stairs. You got into my bed. Every single step was something you chose. The reason my silence is destroying you isn't because you want my forgiveness. It's because you want me to tell you it wasn't as bad as it was. I'm not going to do that. That's all I have. I picked my fork back up. Wyatt's throat moved. He nodded very slowly, like something had just been confirmed for him that he'd been hoping was wrong. My mother reached across the table toward me. Please. He asked me to speak, I said, looking at her. I spoke. I ate. Everyone else made a show of eating. 10 minutes passed in almost total silence. I finished what was on my plate, set my napkin on the table and stood. My mother looked up. Where are you going? Home. It's Thanksgiving. I know. Wyatt pushed his chair back. Don't leave. We can't. We can't, I said. We're done. Mom asked me to come, I came. I said what I had to say, I'm leaving. Ingrid followed me to the hallway. She put her hand on my arm. What you said in there, she said quietly. That was right. What you said was exactly right. I nodded. What? I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. I said goodbye to my parents. My mother was crying. My father had more to say and kept it to himself. I drove home. My phone started ringing before I reached the freeway. Wyatt, my mother, my father, Ingrid. I let all of it go to voicemail and drove home in the quiet. At my kitchen table, I worked through my contacts. Blocked my parents, blocked Wyatt. Blocked every aunt, uncle and cousin who might get pulled into this as a go-between. Deleted the family group chat. Left one final message in a temporary thread I created with all of them. We're done. Don't call, don't text, don't come to my house. You made your choice when you asked me to absorb this instead of asking him to earn his way back. I've made mine. I don't wish any of you harm, but I'm gone. Sent. Deleted the thread. Blocked Wyatt's number. Sat in the quiet of my kitchen for a long time. No guilt, no second guessing. Something closer to the absence of noise. The way a room feels after you turn off a television you forgot was on. 3 weeks later, Wyatt showed up at my gym. I was mid-set on the platform when I looked up and saw him across the weight floor. He spotted me at the same moment. He looked worse than Thanksgiving. Something in him had caved. I racked the bar, grabbed my towel, and walked toward the exit. Wait, he came after me fast. Please, I just need please. I pushed through the door to the parking lot. I'm in therapy, he called. I'm getting help. I need you to know that. I got to my truck and got in and locked the door. He came and stood outside my window with his palm flat on the glass. His face was doing something I made myself not look at too carefully. I started the engine and reversed out. He had to step back or get clipped. I found a different gym the following week. I'd already moved out of the house by then anyway, put it on the market, found a 2-bedroom near Midtown. Simpler, quiet, mine. 6 months after Thanksgiving, Ingrid emailed me. It was a careful email. She'd thought about it for a long time before sending it. She took full responsibility for her own role in pushing me toward reconciliation on Wyatt's timeline instead of mine. She told me things had continued to deteriorate after I left. Wyatt had fixated on Delia. He'd apparently convinced himself that if he could turn the affair into a real relationship, if he and Delia ended up together, then the wreckage would mean something. He'd started showing up at her apartment, calling constantly. She'd filed a restraining order. After that, my parents couldn't hold on to the story they'd been telling themselves. They'd been treating it like a family, in pain, everyone hurting together. A wound that would heal if everyone was patient. Wyatt showing up at everyone's apartment while under a restraining order made it impossible to keep telling that story. My father had stopped speaking to Wyatt. My mother was in therapy. Ingrid said she and Wyatt barely talked anymore. The email ended with this: "We kept asking you to carry the weight of keeping the family together. We never once asked him to earn his place back in it. I understand now why you left. I'm not asking you to come back. I just needed you to know that I understand." I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. I lay there in the dark and thought about all of it. About Wyatt wherever he was. About my parents, trying to salvage their marriage, under the weight of what their choices had cost them. About Ingrid, stuck holding pieces of something that was already broken before she picked them up. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty in the way a storage room feels empty after you've finally cleared it out. Not hollow, just open. They had made their choices. I had made mine. I'm writing this now, 8 months out from the afternoon I came home early from the Gulf and walked upstairs and opened a door. I work my rotation. 3 weeks out, 2 weeks home. My supervisor knows broadly that something significant happened in my personal life. He's perceptive enough to see that a man is different when he's rebuilding, but he doesn't push. He said, "You okay?" Once I said yes, he said good, and we moved on. That was the right amount. I started running again. 6 miles, 3 mornings a week before the heat sets in. I signed up for a woodworking class on my home weeks. Something to do with my hands that isn't work. Something that produces a physical object at the end. I'm not good at it yet. That's the point. I met someone named Celeste in February, a nurse practitioner I ran into at the farmer's market 2 blocks from my apartment. We've been taking it slow and taking it honest. She knows I'm still in the process of becoming someone whole again, and she doesn't reach for the bruised spots. It's real. I don't know the shape of it yet, but it's real. I never replied to Ingrid's email. I'm still deciding if I will. Not because I hate her, I don't. But because I spent 32 years belonging to a family that, when it mattered, showed me very clearly what I was worth to it. And I spent the months after that, figuring out what it felt like to be alone and okay about it. I'm reluctant to give that up before I nut. For I know exactly what I'd be giving it up for. My father left a voicemail 3 weeks ago, on a number he'd somehow found through work channels. He didn't demand anything. He didn't make excuses. He just said he'd been wrong. That he was sorry. That he missed me. I listened to it twice. I didn't call back. People want a clean ending, reconciliation, or full scorched earth revenge. Something with a bow on it. I don't have that to give you. What I have is this. I wake up in the morning in an apartment that is entirely mine. I do work that I'm proud of. I come home to a life that nobody is slowly draining. And sometimes on a Sunday evening I sit on my balcony with a cold beer and watch the city below me and feel something I can only describe as light. Not happy in the loud way, just light. That's what I have. It's not dramatic, but it's honest. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, honest is more than enough.